Yes guys, welcome back to Fight Energy. In this video, I want to take a look at a fight that I feel is slightly going under the radar, which is the rematch between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler that will be taking place in Madison Square Gardens at UFC 309. Because this is a rematch, we do have the first fight to take a look at, and I'm going to be breaking down 3 clips from that first fight to see what both fighters did well, what they did badly, and what they can learn from, because I'm going to end the video with my first prediction. I'll be doing a final UFC 309 prediction, full prediction for the card next week, but I'm going to make an early prediction for this rematch in this video. But just before we get into the first clip, I do want to thank you all for the response to the Khamzat Chimaev video, the breakdown of his dominating victory against Robert Whittaker. That video went down really well, so appreciate all the nice comments, good feedback for that one. And if you do enjoy this type of content, deep diving into the fights, more of a focus on the fights and the action rather than the gossipy stuff in MMA, then do drop a subscribe and a like on this video. But anyway, let's take a look at the first clip. Now, the first clip I want to look at is a potential vulnerability for Charles Oliveira. One thing that makes this fight so exciting is that both fighters do get hit. But it's this habit from Charles Oliveira that does get me worried. And you can see that Michael Chandler picked it up very early on in this fight. As you can see, we're at 4 minutes 40 here. And the pen will be coming out again for this video, just so you're all aware. So, we're at 20 seconds into this fight. And I'm going to play the video through first frame by frame before we break it down. You can see Chandler throws one jab upstairs, throws the same shot twice. And what do you notice about Charles Oliveira's movement? So this is the second jab coming in again. We've gone across pretty much the entire octagon. And Charles Oliveira's movement has been this. No angling off, no turning a corner, backing up in a straight line. Now, if you've watched any of the UFC breakdowns previously, any of the Muay Thai breakdowns that I have done, moving back in a straight line is one of the worst things that you can do, especially against aggressive, direct strikers. Someone who can hit as hard as Michael Chandler. It's absolute madness moving back in a straight line like this. But I'm just moving it back to Chandler's first jab. You can see they're pretty much stood in the centre circle here. A general rule of thumb that I've heard from many striking coaches in my time is do not take more than 2 or 3 steps back before you circle out, before you take an angle. But as you can see here, Chandler goes for that first jab upstairs and he's moving his feet. He's not lunging in with these shots really. He's moving his feet forward aggressively, but he is taking steps. He's not doing any real leaping shots yet. And there's a reason why I'm saying yet. So you can see he pumps out another jab. And now Charles Oliveira is almost against the fence. He hasn't taken any angle at this point. We can tell that Michael Chandler does make this read and realises that Oliveira is backing up in straight lines because of the next sequence that we're going to take a look at. The next blitz from Michael Chandler. Chandler's starting the blitz slightly closer than last time. You couldn't really see because of the angle. However, I have seen a replay of the previous blitz from another angle, and they did start further apart. Here they are much closer together. That means that Chandler has less distance to cover in the blitz to get to Charles Oliveira. Now you can already see Chandler goes for a right hand here rather than a jab. So necessarily he does need to cover more ground because he's in that orthodox stance. So the jab can go further unless you're really reaching out with that right hand. So he's taking a bigger step here. He's being more aggressive, throwing the right hand because he's predicting Charles Oliveira, here we go, to back up in a straight line. He throws a leaping left hook here. Look at his feet. His feet here are very square. Rather than staying in that orthodox position, he's blitzing here, pushing his feet forward. His stance is very square at this point, and he's doing a leaping left hook that does land on Oliveira. Forces his chin way higher. Oliveira's right hand, I don't want to criticise too much. Even though he's getting caught with these left hooks, it's not terribly low. You know, these left hooks are getting through, so you have to blame the guard a little bit. But Chandler's so explosive, he hits so hard. Even if they're not the cleanest of connections, they're still going to do damage. So Chandler made the read that Oliveira is backing up in a straight line. And look, we saw the starting point about here. He's just moving straight back, not angling off at any point, not slipping, just backing up in a straight line. And this is the shot. Again, it kind of clips the side of his head, but because Chandler hits so hard, it really does rock Oliveira. You can see the reaction there. And that almost forces, because he's hit him so hard in that direction, it's almost forcing Oliveira to take a step that way. And yeah, if we continues to play, you can tell that Oliveira is stunned. He didn't get dropped. He was stunned by that shot, and he went for the shot. And this is going to lead to our next sequence. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about backing up in a straight line, why it could play a big factor in this next fight. Because Charles Oliveira is so good on the ground, and so good particularly off his back, as we're about to see in the next clip, he doesn't mind engaging in these firefights so much. If he gets hurt, his recovery is generally very good, again, as we're about to see later on. So he doesn't mind if a fighter follows him to the ground, tries to get him out of there, because he knows that he can offer so many submission threats when they get to the ground. However, Chandler does hit so hard, and he was able to make this read just 15 seconds into this fight. I'm not expecting Oliveira to come out in any different style. He's still going to stand tall, be really sharp with his kicks, with his punches, but he's not going to start angling off. He's just not going to do that. And although Chandler was preparing for McGregor, he has had enough time to go back over the Oliveira film study, to make adjustments, to pick things up, not make the same mistakes as he did in the second round of this fight. But don't be surprised at all to see an aggressive Chandler from the first bell, blitzing forward, leaping shots, trying to get Oliveira out of there early. Oliveira gets hurt with pretty much every shot he takes clean to the chin, and I can't see this fight being any different. Okay, so we fast forwarded to the big submission threat in this fight. As you can see, Charles Oliveira has Chandler's back. This came from that shot that we just saw Charles Oliveira take. Chandler pulled guillotine, they scrambled, Oliveira ended up on his back, and this is where we left off. Oliveira has a body triangle, which, as you know, is a really good control position. It does inhibit the movement of the aggressor, the guy who's got the back, because he can't move so much, but it is really effective at keeping your opponent in position. However, you can see that because Charles Oliveira is going for strikes here, this arm is up, because he's going for strikes with this arm, there is a gap here, and this isn't an ideal back position for Charles Oliveira. Look, Charles Oliveira has probably got the best jiu-jitsu in MMA, or at least it's definitely up there. I think he's got the record tied, doesn't he, for submission victories in the UFC. But obviously he would want, and this is a lesson from my jiu-jitsu coach, he would want Chandler's shoulders and hips parallel with his. But as you can see, Chandler's managed to offset his shoulders, so it's kind of this angle. You know, he isn't parallel. Charles Oliveira doesn't have that tight grip like he normally likes to have when he's got someone's back. Because he's going for strikes, he's probably trying to open Chandler up a bit, able to get his hands together and choke. Let's get rid of some of these lines. But yeah, it's not ideal control from the top perspective, but he does have the body triangle, so he's probably allowing himself a bit more freedom upstairs. Let's move forward a few frames. So at the moment, Chandler is stuck with Charles Oliveira on his back, which is not a great position to be in. But as we said, he's got a bit more room with his upper body, which is allowing him a bit more movement. So he's probably not feeling quite so trapped. Now, this is really important. He's able to pull Charles Oliveira's choking arm down, because this is the arm that was going to go around his neck if he was going for a rear naked choke. He's able to pull that arm down and get 2-on-1 control. 2 arms on one, 2-arm control on his wrist. Now, this is where Chandler's able to get out of it. And he lifts Charles Oliveira's arm over his head. And with the momentum of lifting it over his head, he's able to turn out, keep his hips going. Chandler's so explosive, he's so strong. He turns out into the guard. He almost passes Oliveira's guard, but he ends up a bit of a triangle threat, nothing really there. But for fans of Michael Chandler, this was great to see. A submission threat from the best submission artist in the UFC. Chandler was able to get out of it. However, there are a couple of reasons to be slightly more wary of the submission threat this time around. And firstly, it's the fact that Dustin Poirier was able to submit Michael Chandler with a rear naked choke. Chandler had never been submitted before this fight. I think he relied a lot on his athleticism and his explosiveness to get himself out of bad situations. But the fact that Dustin Poirier was able to submit Michael Chandler will give Charles Oliveira a lot more confidence that if it goes to the ground, maybe he doesn't need to loosen him up so much with the shots. Maybe he can go straight for a submission. If he does what most wrestlers do, which is turn to his knees to stand up if he gets taken down and exposes his back again, I wouldn't expect Charles Oliveira to go for as many punches. I think he'd just try and sink that choke on. And I think you do have to be slightly worried. There's much more of a threat this time round for Charles Oliveira winning by submission, purely because we've seen Chandler get submitted now. And Oliveira is the very best to submit people in the UFC. Okay, let's take a look at the finish. And there are a couple of things from this, even before the final punches are thrown, that could play a part in the rematch. Firstly, Charles Oliveira came out this round like a different fighter. He was getting beaten up in that first round. He spent the majority of the back end of that round on his back. Chandler just picking him off with punches. Had some really nice ground and pound at points. Oliveira was just surviving. But I'm just moving this forward a few frames. Charles Oliveira comes out a lot more confident. I feel as though part of Chandler's downfall here was the fact that he no longer respected what was coming back from him from Charles Oliveira. His defense became a lot more sloppy, as we're going to see. But anyway, before we get there, Charles Oliveira goes for this really nice fake front kick through the middle. And as you can see, he gets a big bite from Michael Chandler. Where's the pen? So, go back. As Oliveira lifts up that front leg, you can see Michael Chandler had eaten a couple of those teeps to the body in the first round. Clearly didn't like it, didn't want to be hit with them again, but that's a great read to have. Look how low Michael Chandler's right hand comes here. Because we are going to be talking about the left hook. Spoiler alert, we're going to be finishing by talking about the left hook and how I think that the left hook might be the shot that determines the outcome of the rematch. But anyway, let's keep it going forward. Charles Oliveira loved getting that, and he gets a bit of a bite on the second one, on the second fake front kick. Now, look, you can just see the edge of his glove there, Chandler's glove. Look how low his right hand is, especially when you compare it to Charles Oliveira's. Charles Oliveira lands a nice short left hook there, backing Chandler up. You'd think at this point, really, Chandler would be more disciplined with that right hand. Both of these fighters love left hooks. And while Michael Chandler might have one of the most powerful left hooks in the lightweight division, Charles Oliveira has one of the most powerful too, and one of the cleanest left hook techniques that we're about to see very soon. So Chandler goes lunging in. He blitzes in at this point, probably thinking he's going to be able to get Oliveira backing up, similarly to how he did in the first round, but not this time. Oliveira's had the word with the corner. He's not going to be backing up in this round. He throws fire with fire. Chandler slips really nice over the first right hand and pulls back, probably expecting a short left hook. But Charles Oliveira's IQ here to throw a really long left hook that connects perfectly on the chin. And look where Charles Oliveira's right hand is. You love to see this stuff when you're breaking down technique. With such a fast-paced, explosive fight, where maybe you're not paying attention to every little detail, seeing this is just great. Look how nice it is. Charles Oliveira's shoulder, it's even protecting that side whilst his arm is extended. Really nice. Connecting Chandler clean on the chin as Michael Chandler's right hand is by his hip. So it connects. And it's really the beginning of the end for Chandler. Here you're about to see, again, that athleticism. That is you see the position that Chandler is in there, on all fours, exposing your back to Charles Oliveira, not where you want to be. That's just pure instinct. He's been completely rocked, dropped, and that's pure instinct. Now you're about to see a real difference between the two fighters as well. Charles Oliveira in this position would stay on the ground. He'd stay on his back, wait for either his opponent to tell him to get back onto his feet, or try and entice his opponent into his guard, I should say. Not Michael Chandler. His instinct is to try get back to his feet and fight. Again, you have to respect it. You have to respect the fight instinct, but it's just a disaster here. And there are not too many clean shots here, but there's enough. There's enough to get Chandler out of there. And yeah. But I thought it was really important to break down this first fight to try and get some kind of idea of how the second fight's going to go. We saw a lot there. We saw the fact that Charles Oliveira will be backing up in straight lines. So the leaping left hook from Michael Chandler was on, and it will be on in this fight. I just don't think Charles Oliveira is the type of fighter with his experience to make such adjustments, such drastic adjustments to his fighting style. He's just not that kind of guy. That shot is going to be on. If Chandler comes out real explosive, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets Oliveira out of there. Then we looked at the submission threat. Chandler, all respect to him, he was able to get out of a fully locked in body triangle where Oliveira was focusing more on strikes rather than the submissions. This time round, we know that Chandler can be submitted. He was submitted by Dustin Poirier. So if Oliveira focuses more on the submission rather than the strikes, the submission is definitely on. And finally, the left hook. Charles Oliveira's defense was so nice. His right hand was really high in that second round. Rather than backing up in a straight line, he decided to meet fire with fire. And Chandler at that point, because he'd had such a good first round, just wasn't respecting what was coming back his way. And that was ultimately his downfall. So how do I think this fight's going to go this time round? I do think it's going to be fireworks. I think Chandler will be itching after all of his time out waiting for McGregor to get back in there, put on a show. I think he's going to put it on Charles Oliveira early, and I think he could get him out of there. I know it's going to upset a lot of people. Though Bronx, these two guys are both my favourite fighters as well. Well, definitely up there. Never in boring fights. I know Chandler got some criticism for waiting out for McGregor for that money. But let's face it, let's be completely honest. Most people would do that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. I think Chandler, this is my early prediction. I think Chandler gets Oliveira out of there early. I think he'll make another epic speech calling out Conor McGregor. And we could still see that fight in early 2025. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later.